So I thought probably one of the most helpful things to do as we come in is do a bit of a character study. And I'm hoping that you at some point have encountered Scrooge, who is the main character in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And if you don't know him, he is written about being a tight-fisted businessman from a tough childhood who learned very early that to have freedom and choice in his life, he needed to hold finances, in particular, very tight to his chest. And so this Scrooge of a character, we get that name thanks to Charles Dickens, is encountered by the ghost of an ex-business partner, Marley, and then by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And so I wonder, as we consider this character, I wonder what in ministry or from my life I hold on to, believing that they will bring me freedom and choice. So dissecting Scrooge's experience, he was so busy getting the task done that he had no time to stop and reflect. And so because of this, Scrooge was oblivious to how his patterns of behaviour had come to be formed. He was oblivious as to how his current behaviours were affecting his relationships with others. And he was also oblivious that there were other options instead of defaulting to old pattern behaviours, and that these came at a relational cost. And so as we consider this character, I am left wondering, I wonder what patterns of behaviour do I hold on to? How did they come to be formed? How do they affect others around me? And what other options are there to me if that is my tried and true behaviour pattern? What other options are there? Because sometimes we just get so busy churning out the next sermon or churning out the next program or visiting the next sick person. How do we get all of that done while we stop and reflect on our behaviour patterns? Now, for Scrooge, fortunately, his experience with the ghosts gave him new insight. It gave him new perspective. It gave him a new view of life. He was able to see how his old patterns had been learnt, and he was able to make some new choices. He could see how people could be viewing him, and he chose to make some new choices. And he could imagine how a change of behaviour could produce a different outcome. If you like, sorry to be really corny, my young adults in my family would be very embarrassed for me to say, it gave him the experience of supervision. And that's what we're here for this morning, is to understand what this supervision is all about. And with that in mind, I'm going to stop sharing and come back here. Taking ourselves out of the movie world for a moment and back into our own reality, what Scrooge experienced through the visiting of these ghosts, past, present, and future, is what we refer to as reflective practice. This is the experience of stopping and viewing one's life and ministry, one's life and one's ministry, removed from the situation. If you like, we become a fly on the wall and we watch it. Just as, from the movie you see standing with the ghost, he's either above the situation or he's to the side of the situation that has occurred or could occur, and he is viewing it. And reflective practice is about stopping, rewinding the movie and reliving experiences and rewatching short segments to go, what on earth was going on there? And for Scrooge, this, as we see in the movie, was an incredibly empowering experience. And I want to suggest that pastoral supervisors are not ghosts. We are flesh and blood, but we get to come alongside. And for Scrooge, one of the really effective parts of this experience was that he had a companion on the journey. He didn't pilgrim through his life. He didn't journey through his life on his own. he went back there with someone. And again, I would suggest that pastoral supervisors are a whole lot more supportive and chatty and friendly than some of those ghosts were. And because Scrooge was empowered, it gave him the insight to get the job done well, to be a compassionate and caring person in his workplace, in his relationships outside of work, so that his relationships no longer suffered. I don't know if you've come across Dr. Henry Cloud. In one of his books called Integrity, he speaks about the wake we leave, like as if we are a vessel on water. And when we move through the water, we leave a wake. We leave the mark of our travel behind us. And Scrooge was able to see the wake that his behavior was leaving in his world. Yes. So reflective practice is about journeying with someone else. It's about stopping and reviewing segments. It's about considering what wake we are leaving. And most importantly, we get to do that in companionship. We get to do that as a journey together. So what's in a name? Why is it pastoral supervision? And again, it depends on who you read and what article, what journal it comes from. But to my mind, pastoral is about the fact that the work we do in ministry is pastoral ministry. So we are pastors, but we are also pastored as we journey in pastoral supervision. So we are pastored, but we are also pastors. We come alongside. Just as if you were in the world of nursing or medicine or pharmacology, it would probably be called clinical supervision, because it's the practice, it's the clinical work that you are reviewing. So it becomes clinical supervision. And why does pastoral supervision sometimes have professional pastoral supervision attached to it? The professional is just to say that you're accredited, which all supervisors need to be for to meet the standards of the Royal Commission that Craig mentioned. So why do we need pastoral supervision? Returning to our PowerPoint, pastor health and healthy congregations requires that we have taken stock of our personal and corporate history, and we are using the assets or the compost of the past in a life-giving way. So to be healthy as pastors and to help our congregations to flourish and be healthy, we need to take stock of the past and our current. We also need to stop and reflect on the wake that our behaviour choices and leadership style are having in our church and with our teams and in our personal life now. And we need to take the long view as to how the fruits of the Spirit are growing in our life, and what further fruit they could produce. And again, whichever metaphor you want, we belong to the vine, but sometimes we need bits clipped off, or we need them tied up to the trellis so that they grow in a particular way. And pastoral supervision offers all of this. And again, it's not just about the past, because if it was all about the past, it would just be belly button gazing, and that's no joy for anyone. And if it's only about the future, then we actually are not taking stock of where we've come from. Supervision is for the benefit of the future, but we have to understand it's in the context of now. And I think possibly a really helpful analogy is the fact that we are in a moving vehicle, but we actually stop for a moment in pastoral supervision, and we do use the side mirror and the rear view mirror to consider the past, and we have a windscreen out the front, but actually we're in the context of now. So pastoral supervision always starts with where we are now. So that's what pastoral supervision is. How does it work? How do we see this through? Now, possibly somewhere in your ministry development, you will have heard about different reflective practice styles or different learning styles. One such style is the Kolb learning style, and this is a model of reflection. And in my nursing background, as well as in my ministry background, and when I've done supervised theological field education, this is the basis of that model. There's lots of them. I'm going to skip through quickly. Another model, again, I've trained predominantly with the Jesuits when it comes to spirituality, and one of their models that comes out of Martin Scroop's material is the Ignatian pedagogy. And it again speaks about context. We are always in context. We are always somewhere now. And we review the experience, we reflect on it, and we work out how we're going to act in a new way. And then we do it, and we come back and we evaluate it. So with this in mind, the long-term goal of supervision is to be reflective in real time, with the skill to make a change as you go. But to be able to make a change as you go, we need to embed practices of reflection so it becomes much more natural. A bit like with my son learning to drive. I've now done 240 hours worth of training with children. You can tell at a certain point where it becomes automatic and they don't need to be told, turn your indicator on, or have your head checked, or remember to slow down a little bit slower instead of coming to a dead stop at the traffic lights. So reflective practice is about embedding muscle memory so that we can start doing reflection, not just with our pastoral supervisor, but as we go. Pastoral supervision provides these opportunities in an action reflection model to help us moving forward. I just want you to stop and consider for a moment how there is a difference in the way a tourist and a pilgrim sees the experience that they're having. I don't know, it's a bit sad to talk about being a tourist when you can only travel within your state, although I did thoroughly enjoy that over Easter. If you're a tourist, you probably look at the world in very set tiny amounts. You hop off the bus, or you get out of the car, or you're allowed off the cruise vessel, and you see a very specific, often the clean, tidy part of town. You look at, often you're looking at things through either your camera lens or a camera, your photo camera lens or a camera's lens. Often there isn't the opportunity to take this big view because everything is so quick, and you often only see the good parts. It's a bit like the Facebook view of someone's life. You know, if our world looked like what we post on Facebook, we obviously live in a completely different world to the reality I see around me. But in pastoral supervision, it's a little bit more like the pilgrimage. Again, somebody's with you. They might be in silence with you, or they might be in conversation with you, but it's very much about the slow, steady tread, one foot after the other. And often it is the breathtaking views as you pilgrim, as you travel. But it's also quite a connected one. A pilgrimage is much more connected with the here and now than what's the next destination, what time do we have to be there. It's about the encounter and the story and the event. So when we think about seeing, there's a book, Leach and Friend, Michael Leach and someone Rose, who speaks about 3 levels of seeing. And seeing that is short and sharp, seeing that has an effect on us, seeing that changes the way we do life. And with that in mind, I've asked Craig if he'll come back on and if he will read this familiar passage that chances are we read over the Easter period. Thanks, Craig.
Sure. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed.
Thanks, Craig. So I got the names wrong. It's Michael Patterson and Jessica Rose, Pastoral Supervision in Practice. And they point out that in the English version of this text, all three kinds of seeing are translated the same. That is, he saw or she saw. But in the Greek, these three words connote different levels of seeing. So please excuse my Greek. Blipo. This first level of seeing is I see, I notice. You know, Mary and John notice the stone. They know Mary notices the stone. John notices the linen wrappings lying in the tomb. And then the second level of seeing, theore, which is I wonder, I muse. And we see this with Peter. When Peter comes to the tomb, he sees the linen wrappings lying there. The cloth from Jesus's head, not with the other wrappings, but lying there by itself. So he's seen two things and gone, huh? I wonder what that's about. And then this third level of seeing, when John goes in for the second time, John goes into the tomb, and this verb, however you say that, is used to refer to a deeper level of insight. That is, the spiritual meaning of what he sees is emphasized by the coupling with the word believed. He saw and he believed. And so in pastoral supervision, it's about being in the now, that the real experience for Mary, Peter, and John was they were there at the tomb where their beloved Jesus should have been, but wasn't. Can you feel that? Sorry, as I hit my microphone, that tension of this is not what I expected. And there are these three levels of seeing. So I see, I notice, superficial, much more like the tourist version. And then Peter, I wonder, I muse. Peter doesn't just notice these things, but he wonders about them. And he asks, you know, we can imagine him asking, how did this come to be like this? And then for John, this I realize, I perceive. This kind of seeing is about perceiving things as they really are. So taking that long view, that high view, that fly on the wall view, and taking the whole scene in, considering the past and the current, and he wonders and he believes. So there's a whole change in this. He comes to believe something new. So we need to keep the past, present, and future in mind. Otherwise, it is all just about belly button gazing. The long-term goal of supervision is to be reflective in real time. And so pastoral supervision is about these three levels of seeing and moving us into that deeper level. It's about someone journeying with you and being able to ask you, so what did you notice? What are you wondering about when you consider this encounter you're telling me about? Has it changed anything for you? Would you do anything differently? And so that's pastoral supervision in a speed version webinar.